Hi there, Kate Bora and Fiona Pearman. And this week we're continuing our conversation around why relationships matter so much when it comes to our professional performance and progression. And today we want to dig into what gets in the way of our beliefs, the assumptions we make, the stories we tell ourselves around building professional relationships. And I think the first place to start is we tell ourselves we don't have the time or it's not important. And the example I always talk to when we're in rooms with clients discussing the importance of building relationships is, walk around Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday afternoons in any city. We're Sydney based. And literally, like last Thursday, 3:35, I was walking around Martin Place. And I looked around and this whole pub was full. It took my attention, right? Because I was like, what's going on there? And I stopped for a second. I had a look, and there was groups mostly of guys. I think I counted. I went back and counted, and there were two women with in two separate groups with another man. But the place was packed, right, with guys having coffee and beers, in conversation, in connection, building relationships. And so what we see is, for some people, they do prioritize it. We know it's really important, but this belief and assumption that we make around, I don't have the time or it's not important, is a really critical one to lean into.
Yes, I just love this example because it speaks so much to some of the default thinking that's going on for women. And there are all manner of reasons why we shy away from building relationships, why we think we can't. But this piece about not having enough time or priority comes up always. And yes, there are tons of other things we could be doing. And yet, when we don't prioritize it, it tends to cost us a lot in terms of our professional recognition, our visibility. We know that there's a lot of fears that sit below why women are not building relationships. Um, and some of that stems from the idea that, look, my work should speak for itself. I'm already doing good work. I'm being told I do good work. Shouldn't that be enough? We don't want to feel as though we then, on top of that, have to invest all this time in building relationships. And yet, what we notice time and again is if we're not doing that, other people have built the relationships, have the connections. There's another piece about judgment. We're worrying what people will think. We're worried that potentially it might be seen as political, or I'm getting an unfair advantage, or, I'm somehow ingratiating myself with people and that's not going to look good. So there's a whole lot of stories that might be happening in the background.
Yeah, I think linked into that piece around not wanting an unfair advantage is, not wanting to waste, a senior person's time. Like, what will they think of me if I reach out and, want to have a coffee or a catch up, virtually, a virtual coffee? And I know early in my career that was very true for me. I started my career at KPMG. I actually chose KPMG because my dad played football with one of the then partners. And so I didn't know that person personally, but I knew of the organization by virtue of my dad's relationship with this particular partner. And I know, I never, ever, ever, I was in the interview process with that person, but I never, ever actually reached out and had a conversation connection during my sort of 4 years or so that I was at KPMG with that particular partner. And I know, had I, he happily would have. In fact, only a year or two ago, I looked him up on LinkedIn because I was catching up with my dad and we were wondering where that partner was. And I reached out, and then I had a cup of coffee. He's no longer working there, but I had a cup of coffee, and we catch up or talk on LinkedIn every so often. But that fear of rejection, fear of not wanting to waste someone's time or get that unfair advantage stopped me from even thinking about, right? Didn't even get past the thinking space of reaching out and building that contact and that relationship.
Yeah, I'm sure we've all got examples, something like that. And there's a lot that sits below the surface here as well. There's the thing that we're worried about rejection. We're worried that they won't want to talk to me, that they don't have time, that they can't accommodate what we need. It feels a little bit awkward and uncomfortable when we're the one putting ourselves out there and wanting to build some relationship, to gain some traction with someone. When we're not used to doing that, of course, it feels awkward at first. And then we're worried potentially that if I do build the relationships, I get a great opportunity, but then the spotlight's on me, pressure's on, and if I don't succeed, if I actually fail or I stuff it up in some way, that's going to turn out badly. So lots of ways in which we can start to self-sabotage when we think about this topic of building relationships.
Yeah, I think next to our beliefs, assumptions, stories we tell ourselves about the need or what's going to be required, is potentially a lack of access to networks, not knowing who I need to build relationships with. And, we know here that, we always say, who do you know who might know someone? Like, who can you ask who could actually make some introductions? We'll talk far more about that in later videos when we get to the how to. But this lack of access to people and networks can be a bit of a stumbling block, especially if you're already feeling a little bit uncomfortable and not wanting to do this in the first place.
Yeah, I think it feels awkward at first. It feels easier to stay in our comfort zone. Humans, we're very comfort seeking. We like to do the easy things. We don't like the uncomfortable things. So it makes sense that we stay small and safe rather than give this a go. And it costs us a lot. So we're really trying to disrupt your thinking around this and to not necessarily see that comfort as being so important, but the willingness to engage, to try something different being important. There's a piece around attention or a paradox that people have. A lot of women are very good at giving. We're very good at helping others. We're very good at helping more junior team members. We're very good at sponsoring and looking after others as they come through. And that can feel exhausting. And so we have this piece around, well, that's how it is for me. I don't want to ask other people. I don't want to necessarily put that burden on others. And so in doing that, we end up being invisible. We end up not being seen in ways that would be really beneficial, not just to us, but to the organization. I think we underestimate when you make yourself small, when you don't build relationships. Yes, you miss out, but the organization misses out on your contributing at that more senior level. And that can really reduce your impact.
Yeah, I think especially the more senior you get, right? When we're more junior, progression tends to rely on the decisions of an individual, often your line leader. The more senior you get, the more that there's multiple decision makers in hiring decisions, remuneration decisions, etc. And so, the more senior we get, the more important it is to make this a priority, to challenge some of these beliefs, assumptions, the stories we tell ourselves, and to look at how do I do it in a really authentic way. And we're going to talk more about that in the videos to come. We're going to leave it there. If you've enjoyed today's confidence conversation, we'd love to hear from you. If you know someone who'd benefit, please share this video with them. If you'd like to hear more of our videos in this series or lots of other great videos, head over to our YouTube channel, hundreds and hundreds of videos, including stories from our Acts of Confidence alumni who share the impact of our work on their lives personally and professionally. And if and when you're ready to go deeper with your relationship with core confidence, visit our website, coreconfidence.com.au. Thanks for tuning in today. Don't forget to hit subscribe on your YouTube channel for more insights on confidence, leadership, and complex work environments. We drop new videos regularly and we'd love to share them with you.